Hey guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today we're headed back underwater. We're going to take a look at some different soft plastics. We're going to look at how they move in the water and how fish react to them. Let's go. Let's kick things off with the drop shot. The drop shot takes your soft plastic and it suspends it up off of the bottom in front of the fish. It forces an interaction. They either have to do something about that bait being in front of them, or they have to swim away and leave it alone. It's a very unique presentation. Now, the drop shot on the surface is very simple, but the reality is that there are so many ways to do the drop shot wrong. The biggest mistake people make is that they don't pay attention to their rigging, and we're going to try and correct that today. Take a look at this first clip. This is a bait that isn't rigged properly. The bait itself is a great bait, but it's not rigged properly. It causes it to roll off to a side and ultimately settle tail down. Now, something you may have never realized is that the actual individual colors of your favorite worms don't all have the same buoyancy. So even when you find a great bait to drop shot with, different colors respond differently. And that's why Tim and I are very consistent with the colors that we recommend. When we're looking at drop shot baits, we want to, one, make sure our baits are rigged perfectly. Two, make sure that we've chosen a bait that suspends and flows very naturally in the water, because not all soft plastics are created equal. Take a look at a handful of these baits underwater. Watch how the baits themselves move. Watch how the fish interact with them. And then we'll talk a little bit about what you're seeing. As you can see, when a drop shot is rigged correctly, you get incredible action out of the bait and you get an incredible response from the fish. The four baits that you saw there, the big bite baits, sensation smasher, that missile bomb shot, that X-Zone hot shot minnow, and then that Rains bubbling shaker, those are four of our favorites, and you can see why that is. But outside of the bait itself, it all comes down to rigging, because you can take those same baits, you can rig them incorrectly, and you can ruin them. Now, I'm not advocating for one rigging style over another. What I'm advocating for is that this winter, you pay close attention to the fine details, no matter how you want to rig it, because you can do the traditional nose rig. Hopefully you can see it there in the nose of that bait. You can take that same bait and you can do the hidden nose rig, where you take that hook, you poke it in, but you don't pop all the way out the top. You leave it hidden inside there, and the worm itself protects that hook point so that it's very weedless. Or you can do the thread on technique, where you run that hook through the bait and pop out the back, resulting in a very straight and flat presentation in the water. No matter which one of these you choose, the most important detail is that it is straight. You need to take your worm and thread it on straight, but you also need to tie your hook on straight. Tie it on with a Palomar. When you're done, take your tag, put it through again, and then check it. Pull everything tight. Make sure that the hook is sitting dead level with the line, perfectly vertical. If it's not, make adjustments or retie completely, because as you can see in that footage, getting it totally vertical is critical to getting that natural flowing action out of the baits. Now after that, those 4 baits in particular, and we'll link all this stuff in the video description for you, those 4 baits in particular are incredible standouts. We'll link the baits themselves, our favorite colors, our favorite hooks for rigging them, all that stuff. But how you rig any worm will make a huge difference in how the fish interact with it, because it can be the difference between getting a perfect flow, getting a bait that's off to the side, and getting a bait that just hangs there in the water column looking terribly. Now, we're not just talking drop shots today. We're also talking Ned rigs and Texas rigs. Now let's start with the Ned Rig. The Ned Rig is such an amazing bait. You take a downsized presentation. Traditionally, you give it very little action. You let it sit on the bottom. But I'll tell you what, things change through the years. And we tend to give our Ned Rigs a lot of action. Bumping them, popping them, shaking them. I look for unique profiles, not just traditional Ned worms, but unique profiles that stand out from the crowd. Those are the baits that I personally like to Ned Rig fish. We're going to head underwater here in a second. You'll take a look at these 4 baits. We've got from Z-Man the TRD Craws, as well as the TRD Bugs. From Savage Gear, we've got their Ned Salamander. And then from X-Zone in their Stealth Finesse series, we've got that Stealth Finesse Creature. Let's head underwater and look at how these baits work. But first, let's take a look at a perfect example of the mistake that you can make. The biggest mistake you can make with a Ned Rig is rigging it on a head that is too heavy. Here is a Finesse TRD, one of the best Ned baits ever made, rigged on too heavy of a head. This is a floating bait. The bait wants to stand up, but the head that we put on here was so heavy, and the hook itself was so heavy, that it was forcing that TRD to lay down on the bottom, and it looked terrible, resulting in a fish that didn't want to eat a bait that should be standing up and looking perfect. Now that you've seen that, because that Finesse TRD is an unbelievably buoyant bait, it wants to stand straight up. So now that you realize you can take the wrong head, that was a custom poured head, by the way. That wasn't even a head that's out on the market, but it was too heavy with too stout of a hook. And the result was that it knocked that bait down. Now that you've seen what can go wrong, here are 2 examples of really good heads that we love to use. And again, we'll link all this stuff in the video description, so don't worry about the details, but this is an exposed hook. This is more of a weedless Texas style hook that allows it to drag through cover and things like that without catching. But the key, no matter what style of head you choose, is to use the lightest weight that you can get away with. The lighter the weight, the better that bait will float, the better it will move, because not all of these baits are designed to float. Some of these are just very neutral in the water, but by pairing them to a really light head, you get great flow from the bait. So let's head underwater and look how these things move and how the fish interact with them. Now for our final example, let's talk about the Texas rig. For the Texas rig, when we head underwater, we're going to look at, again, the TRD craws and the TRD bugs. The big thing here with the Texas rig is that this is an ultra light rig. We are using a 1/16 ounce weight and either a size 1 or 1/0 hook. So a very small downsized Texas rig. You can throw this on spinning tackle or you can throw it on bait finesse gear, but it is a very finessey presentation. The benefit of the Texas rig is that the weight is not connected to the hook. They separate from each other in the water, which allows the bait to have even more movement, even more flow in the water. And you'll see as you watch these clips, I'll try to slow one of them down for you. So you see as the fish eats the bait, that Texas rig weight slides away. The result is that what the fish has picked up is completely weightless. They have no clue that what they've scooped up is not real, and it gives you even more time to realize what's happened and set the hook. That fish isn't feeling all that weight and trying to spit it out. They feel nothing. They've eaten their meal and they're turning. They don't know that they've made a mistake. That Texas rig takes that Ned Rig profile and takes it to even another level. Isn't it fascinating how well those baits move on that Texas rig, even as compared to a Ned Rig? But I'll tell you what, if it's a lightweight Ned Rig, they move incredibly as well. The key to this entire thing, whether it's a drop shot, whether it's a Ned Rig, whether it's a Texas rig, is to go with the lightest weight that you can get away with. Go with the lightest hook option that you can get away with. The smallest hook, the lightest wire hook. We're trying to take weight out of the rig. People miss that, and it's a huge deal, especially when the water is cold, especially when fish are leery, they're not super aggressive, and they're taking their time to study the bait. The lighter weight that you go with, the better off you are, because it allows the most natural movement in the bait, and they will hold on to it the longest. Guys, this was our first underwater video of the year. Hopefully you enjoyed heading down below the surface with us, watching not only the baits and the rigging, but how those bass interact with them as well. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.